Darrell Abbott's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he sat in the passenger seat of his brother Vinny's pickup truck, parked outside a rehearsal space in Arlington, Texas. It was August 1983, and the 17-year-old guitarist had been waiting for 52 minutes, trying to build the courage to walk through that door and face the man who could change everything. Dave Mustaine was inside. The recently fired Metallica guitarist, who was already building a reputation as one of the most technically demanding players in the emerging thrash metal scene. Dave was putting together a new band called Megadeth, and he needed a lead guitarist who could match his aggressive precision. This was Darrell's shot at escaping the Dallas club circuit, where he and Vinny had been grinding away for years, playing covers at backyard parties and dive bars for crowds that barely remembered their names the next morning. But Darrell was terrified. Not of performing. He'd won local guitar competitions since he was 14 years old. He was terrified of what Dave Mustaine represented. Validation from the underground metal scene that had been exploding across America. Validation that a Texas kid with a homemade Dean guitar and a love for Kiss could actually make it in the brutal world of thrash metal. Darrell looked down at his guitar, a Dean ML that his father had helped him customize. He'd added his own pickup configurations and modified the wiring to get a tone that was somewhere between traditional metal and something heavier, groovier. Professional guitarists in the thrash scene were playing Jacksons and B.C. Riches with lightning-fast necks designed for the genre's demanding technique. Darrell had a guitar that looked more suited for arena rock than the basement aggression of thrash metal. His brother Vinny was supposed to come inside with him, but Vinny had decided to wait in the truck, giving Darrell space to prove himself on his own terms. Vinny was the confident one, the drummer who could walk into any situation and command respect. Darrell was quieter, more focused on letting his playing speak for itself. But what if his playing wasn't fast enough? What if Dave Mustaine took one look at his modified Dean and decided Darrell didn't fit the thrash aesthetic? The underground metal scene was notoriously judgmental about authenticity, and Darrell's background in guitar competitions and cover bands might seem too commercial, too polished for what Megadeth was trying to build. Darrell finally forced himself out of the truck at 3:47 p.m. He was wearing his typical outfit, denim vest over a black t-shirt, his hair already growing longer in the style that would become his trademark. His father had always told him that confidence came from preparation, and Darrell had prepared obsessively for this audition. He'd learned every Metallica song he could get his hands on, studied Dave Mustaine's playing style, practiced until his fingers developed calluses on top of existing calluses. He grabbed his guitar and a small practice amp from the truck bed. The amp wasn't his best equipment, but it was portable enough to carry into the rehearsal space without help. Darrell walked toward the entrance, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his temples. Inside, the space was typical of underground metal rehearsal studios in the early 80s. Concrete floors, soundproofing foam haphazardly stapled to walls, the lingering smell of cigarettes and spilled beer. Darrell's eyes adjusted to the fluorescent lighting that gave everything a harsh, unforgiving quality. A few people were scattered around the room, and there, standing near a wall of Marshall amps, was Dave Mustaine. Even in rehearsal clothes, Dave had an intensity that was almost physical. Red hair, sharp features, and an expression that suggested he was constantly evaluating whether you were wasting his time. He was talking to another musician, gesturing emphatically, clearly in the middle of explaining some technical point about songwriting or arrangement. A guy with a clipboard approached Darrell from the side. He looked like a roadie or maybe Dave's manager, someone used to dealing with the constant stream of musicians who wanted to be part of whatever Dave was building. "You Darrell Abbott?" the guy asked. "Yes, sir," Darrell said. his Texas accent thick despite years of trying to sound more neutral. Diamond Darrell from the competition circuit? The guy had done his homework. Darrell had won several guitar competitions under the name Diamond Darrell, a nickname that came from his flashy playing style and the diamond-shaped inlays on his guitar's fretboard. "That's me," Darrell confirmed. The guy looked him up and down, taking in the denim vest and the Dean ML. "Dave's running behind. You've got maybe 5 minutes when he's ready. Set up over there and wait." Darrell walked to the indicated area and started unpacking his guitar. His hands were steadier now that he was actually inside, now that the waiting was almost over. He plugged into his practice amp and did a quick sound check, adjusting his tone settings. The sound wasn't perfect through the small amp, but it would have to do. Dave Mustaine finished his conversation and turned toward Darrell. His eyes went immediately to the Dean ML, and Darrell saw something shift in Dave's expression. Not impressed, more like confused or possibly dismissive. Dave walked closer, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Diamond Darrell," Dave said, making the nickname sound almost mocking. "I've heard about you. Competition circuit, right? Lots of local trophies." "Yes, sir," Darrell said. "I've been playing since I was 12. Won a few contests, been working on original material with my brother." Dave stared at the Dean guitar, then at Darrell's practice amp. "That's what you brought to audition for Megadeth? A competition guitar and a practice amp?" Darrell felt his stomach tighten. "This is my main guitar, sir. I've modified it myself to get the tone I want. The amp isn't my best rig, but I can show you what I can do." Dave crossed his arms. "Here's the thing, kid. Megadeth isn't a guitar competition. We're not looking for someone who can play fast scales to impress judges at some Texas talent show. We're building something that's going to destroy what Metallica's doing. We need aggression, precision, and a player who understands that thrash metal isn't about showing off. It's about serving the song." Darrell's heart sank, but he pushed forward. "I understand that, sir. I've been studying the genre. I know your work with Metallica. I can adapt my style to what you're building." Dave shook his head slowly. "I don't think you can. Look at you. You've got competition trophies and a modified Dean ML. That's arena rock thinking. That's Van Halen thinking. Megadeth needs raw power, not polished technique." The words hit Darrell like physical blows. Everything Dave was saying was aimed at the very foundation of who Darrell was as a guitarist. The competitions, the modified equipment, the focus on technical skill, all of it was being dismissed as wrong for what Dave needed. "Give me 5 minutes," Darrell said, hearing the desperation in his own voice. "Let me show you what I can do." Dave looked at his watch. "I've got 3 other guitarists coming in today. You want to plug in and play something? Go ahead. You've got 3 minutes." Darrell plugged his guitar into the practice amp with shaking hands. He'd prepared a medley that would showcase his speed, his precision, his ability to play thrash-style riffs. But standing there under Dave Mustaine's skeptical gaze, Darrell made a split-second decision. Instead of trying to prove he could play thrash, he played what felt natural. He launched into a riff that was heavy but groovy, something that had elements of thrash aggression but with a swing to it. A rhythmic bounce that made you want to move rather than just headbang. His fingers flew across the fretboard, hitting harmonics and dive bombs with his whammy bar, creating a sound that was unmistakably metal but different from the straight-ahead thrash assault that Metallica and the emerging Bay Area scene were perfecting. Darrell could feel it in his playing. This was what he was meant to do. Not copy what already existed, but create something new. But Dave Mustaine held up his hand after barely 90 seconds. Stop, Dave said. Darrell stopped mid-phrase, his guitar still ringing. That's enough. What was that? Dave's tone wasn't curious. It was critical. That's my style, Darrell said. It's heavy, but it's got groove. I think metal can be aggressive without losing the rhythm that makes people want to move. Dave stared at him for a long moment. Groove. Dave repeated the word like it was a foreign concept. You think Megadeth needs groove? I think every band benefits from having their own sound, Darrell said, finding a small spark of confidence. Thrash is incredible, but there's room for evolution. Metal that hits hard but makes you feel something in your chest, not just your head. Dave walked closer to Darrell, and the intensity in his eyes was almost frightening. Let me explain something to you, kid. Metallica fired me because they thought I was too aggressive, too uncompromising. So I'm building a band that's going to be even more aggressive, even more uncompromising. What you just played, that groove thing, that's what I'm moving away from. That's traditional metal thinking. Megadeth is about speed, precision, and technical fury. Darrell felt the last bit of hope draining away. I can play fast, sir. I can play precise. I've been practicing thrash technique for months. But it's not what comes naturally to you, Dave said. I can hear it in your playing. You're forcing yourself to be something you're not. You're a groove player trying to be a thrash guitarist. That's not going to work in my band. The guy with the clipboard appeared at Dave's shoulder. We've got the next audition waiting outside. Dave nodded, then turned back to Darrell. Here's my advice. Go back to Dallas. Keep playing your groove metal or whatever you want to call it. Maybe there's an audience for that somewhere. But Megadeth needs pure thrash. You're talented, but you're not what we're building. Darrell unpacked his guitar and walked out of the rehearsal space in a daze. The entire audition had lasted less than 5 minutes from the moment he plugged in to the moment Dave dismissed him. He made it back to Vinny's truck and climbed into the passenger seat. Vinny took one look at his brother's face and didn't ask any questions. He just started the truck and began the drive back to Dallas. They were 20 minutes down the highway before Darrell could speak. He said, I'm not what they're building, Darrell finally said. He said my groove style doesn't fit thrash metal. He told me to go back to Dallas and keep playing, whatever I want to call it. Vinny was quiet for a moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Dave Mustaine doesn't get to define what metal is, Vinny said finally. He's building his thing. That doesn't mean our thing is wrong. But what if he's right? Darrell asked. What if groove metal isn't what people want? What if I'm trying to create something that nobody cares about? Vinny pulled the truck over to the side of the highway. He turned to face his brother directly. Do you believe in what you're playing? Vinny asked. Yeah, Darrell said. I do. When I play those groovy riffs, when I make it heavy but bouncy, that feels right to me. That's the music I hear in my head. Then that's what we do, Vinny said. We're not going to chase what Metallica's doing or what Megadeth's doing. We're going to create our own thing. And if Dave Mustaine can't see that, that's his loss, not ours. Darrell looked at his brother, seeing the absolute certainty in Vinny's eyes. The Abbott brothers had been playing music together since childhood. Vinny on drums, Darrell on guitar. They'd always been a team, always believed in each other even when nobody else did. You really think we can make groove metal work? Darrell asked. I know we can, Vinny said, but we need a new name for you. Diamond Darrell sounds like competition circuit stuff. We need something that fits what we're actually doing. Over the next few months, Darrell became obsessed with developing his groove metal concept. He listened to Black Sabbath's heavy swing, Judas Priest's precision, and Metallica's aggression, then tried to synthesize all of it into something unique. He started calling himself Dimebag Darrell, a nickname that came from his habit of buying $10 bags of marijuana, a more street-level identity that fit the heavy, earthy music he was creating. He and Vinny reformed their band Pantera with a new direction. No more glam metal, no more trying to fit into what was commercially successful. They were going to play groove metal, whether the industry was ready for it or not. Darrell spent hours every day working on his guitar tone, trying to create a sound that was heavy as hell, but still had clarity and punch. He developed a playing style that emphasized powerful, syncopated riffs over pure speed. He made his guitar sound like a freight train, unstoppable and heavy, but with a rhythm that made you move. In 1990, Pantera released Cowboys from Hell, an album that introduced the world to groove metal. The title track opened with one of Darrell's signature riffs, heavy and aggressive, but with an undeniable groove that made it different from straight thrash. Critics didn't know what to make of it at first. It was too heavy for traditional metal fans, too groovy for thrash purists. But audiences responded immediately. Cowboys from Hell started selling, slowly at first, then building momentum. By 1992, Pantera released Vulgar Display of Power, and groove metal exploded into the mainstream. Songs like Walk and Mouth for War showcased exactly what Darrell had been trying to explain to Dave Mustaine back in 1983. Metal that hit with crushing force but made you want to move your entire body, not just bang your head. Dimebag Darrell became recognized as one of the most influential guitarists in metal. His playing style, that groove-heavy approach that Dave had dismissed, became copied by thousands of guitarists around the world. Pantera sold millions of albums, headlined major festivals, and proved that groove metal wasn't just viable, it was revolutionary. Years later, in a 1998 interview, Dave Mustaine was asked about guitarists he'd auditioned over the years who went on to success elsewhere. "I had Dimebag Darrell audition for Megadeth back in the early days," Dave admitted. He was calling himself Diamond Darrell back then, playing this groove-heavy style that I didn't think fit what we were building. I told him to go back to Texas and keep doing his thing. The interviewer asked if Dave regretted that decision. "Regret is a strong word," Dave said carefully. Dimebag went on to create something completely his own with Pantera. He developed groove metal into a legitimate genre. That's not what Megadeth needed, but it was clearly what metal needed. "I saw a talented guitarist who didn't fit my vision. I didn't see that he had his own vision that would end up being just as influential." Dimebag himself rarely talked about the Megadeth audition, but in a 2001 interview, he brought it up. "Dave Mustaine told me my groove style didn't fit thrash metal," Dimebag said. "And you know what? He was absolutely right. I wasn't meant to play thrash. I was meant to create something different. Dave telling me I wasn't what he was building freed me to become what I was supposed to be." The interviewer asked if Dimebag was grateful for the rejection. "Hell yeah," Dimebag said. "If Dave had said yes, if I'd joined Megadeth, I would have spent years trying to be a thrash guitarist. I would have been okay at it, maybe even good. But I never would have developed groove metal. I never would have found my own voice. Getting rejected pushed me to stop trying to fit into someone else's vision and start building my own." Dave Mustaine's rejection of Dimebag Darrell in August 1983 could have ended Darrell's ambitions of making it in the metal scene. Instead, it became the catalyst that pushed him to develop groove metal, a genre that would influence heavy music for decades. The man who told Dimebag his style didn't fit ended up watching Dimebag become one of the most revolutionary guitarists in metal history. Pantera's Cowboys from Hell, the album that introduced groove metal to the world, is now considered one of the most important metal albums ever made. The guitar playing that Dave dismissed as too groovy became Dimebag's signature, copied by countless musicians. The Abbott brothers' decision to stop chasing thrash and create their own sound changed the trajectory of heavy music. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a musician is having someone tell them they don't fit. Because that's when you realize you're not supposed to fit. That's when you discover that your unique voice, the thing that makes you different, is actually your greatest strength. Dimebag Darrell was told his groove style didn't fit thrash metal. Instead of changing his style, he doubled down on it, perfected it, and created a genre that stands alongside thrash as one of metal's most influential movements. The rejection that could have destroyed his confidence instead clarified his purpose. The audition that lasted less than 5 minutes led to a career that changed metal forever.